Welcome back to Real Estate 101. Today we're going to continue our discussion on home inspections and talk a little bit about foundations. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Greg McHale of CSS Inspections. Greg, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
So Greg, I want to start today's show and talk about foundations. And I want to ask you, what kinds of foundations do you normally find when you're doing inspections?
Foundations here in the Ontario area, there's a number of different types. Common ones are block foundation. That's mid 50s and up. And they're poured concrete foundations are more common today, but people still do block foundations. There are also stone foundations for very old houses. I grew up in houses that were built in the 1800s, and they have stone foundations. So you have, even the city of Toronto or big cities, you'll have houses with stone foundations.
They're older.
They're much older houses, typically close to 100 years or more old. And there are also houses today with ICF, which is styrofoam building blocks, and they pour concrete in it with reinforcing steel. Very good foundations, very energy efficient. Another type I've run across here in Ontario, it's not very common here in Ontario, it's more common in Alberta, is plywood, pressure-treated plywood wood foundations. And that's approved. And it's they use pressure-treated plywood, pressure-treated 2x6s, and for the walls, and the dirt is backed up, filled onto it.
All right. So we know that foundations are in the ground usually. How do builders stop water from coming in?
The first way to stop water from entering into your foundation is to put in weeping tiles around the foundation to allow the water to drain into the weeping tile and then direct that weeping tile water away from the structure itself. The next step is to treat your foundation wall with some kind of waterproofing type material. Typically today they use an oil-based spray. Back in the 60s and 70s, that's what they would use. Also today they use a plastic membrane on top of the oil-based spray, which is even better. Because water coming through the foundation can be a very expensive situation.
All right, so for foundations, what would you say, in your opinion, is better? Block foundations or poured concrete?
Poured concrete foundation. The poured concrete foundation is stronger. If you get a crack on it, the crack has a longer way to penetrate through the wall to have any water come inside. Also, the concrete foundation, the poured concrete foundation is warmer. With a block foundation, you have holes inside the blocks. And so air goes down those holes. So the block itself, that's about an inch or maybe 3/4 of an inch on two sides, that's all that's protecting it. And also a poured foundation wall is easier to fix. If you have a crack, you can fix it better easier than you can with a block foundation wall.
And just by what, injection and stuff?
Injection, there's different ways of fixing it. I mean, if it's got a crack, you can inject it with a silicone-based stuff that's hard, epoxy that's very hard. And usually the companies that do that will warranty it for life and transfer it to other homeowners.
Yeah.
You can also use hydraulic cement to fill in cracks or little holes and stuff like that. And there are other types of systems. If you can't, for example, like a stone foundation wall, you can't inject it because you got stones all over the place. So there you have to either dig up the foundation and waterproof the whole exterior foundation, very expensive. You can also go to the special sealed foundation, like a Clark system type thing, where the whole foundation on the inside is basically encapsulated in a plastic bag. They collect water from the perimeter of it and they pump it all out. Very, very expensive to do that. And they do this right in the city of Toronto too. There's houses here in Toronto because they're old houses. Again, if you have a stone foundation, water will come through.
Right.
eventually.
Okay, so let's say one of our viewers or listeners just recently bought a home, brand new home from a builder, and they have a foundation crack. Will the builder repair it?
It depends on the size of the crack. Foundation cracks have to be 6 millimeters, which is half an inch, for a builder to fix it, unless water's leaking through it. So if water leaks through the crack, doesn't matter how big the crack, how small the crack is, they must fix it as per the Terceira warranty requirements. But if there is no water leaking through it, it has to be half an inch before the builder will fix it.
Okay, and let's say they just notice some, a little bit of water on the foundation wall, on the interior of the foundation wall. Should they be concerned?
They should be concerned. There are a number of different reasons why you can have water on the foundation wall. If it's in the summertime, it can be condensation because your basement's cold, and you're going to have cold air is moist, and it meets the wall, and you get condensation. That's a big problem actually in foundations as new houses. As we make them more airtight, we have moisture in the house, and it condenses on the plastic vapor barrier on the foundation insulation. So you typically see it going around wherever that plastic is. The bottom piece of that plastic is a metal band, and there'd be moisture there. That's from condensation.
Right.
Another way of having water on the inside would be you see a streak coming down. So the streak could be coming down because of a hole or a crack. A hole would come from, on a poured concrete foundation, would be there's forming pins inside the concrete. And the pins are there to hold the wooden forms apart while they pour the concrete in it. When they take the walls away from the foundation, the pins remain. Those pins have to be covered on the exterior, or else the steel pin rusts and water will penetrate on the inside. So if you have that, then the pin can be on the inside. You can cover it with hydraulic cement. And if you have a crack, then you either use hydraulic cement or you can use injection molding. Another way water can be coming through on the inside would be if it's just like little beads, almost like it's sweating, the wall's sweating. That's the worst one. Because if it's sweating, then it's likely that your water barrier on the exterior has degraded and needs to be repaired or replaced, which means typically you're going to have to dig up your foundation and redo your water treatment
weeping
protection.
tiles.
Weeping tiles,
Right.
or it could be the spray-on oil. Like you get a crack and it now comes through, and the oil has deteriorated, so water permeates through. Concrete is porous, so water will go through the concrete. So if you have a little bit of it looks like sweat, that's probably the worst one, and you need to call a foundation specialist to look at it, because typically that's going to mean you got to dig your foundation up. All the other ones can be fixed from the inside.
All right.
Fairly reasonably cost.
Okay, so what about that white powdery substance that sometimes appears on the interior of foundation walls, like sometimes in the basement?
Yeah, that's called efflorescence, and that's different types of salts inside the building material, whether it's concrete. You see it on bricks sometimes outside of a building, and water has permeated into that material, and it has washed the salts out to the surface. So it's kind of a hard thing to kind of get rid of. The easy one, you can just scrub it off, and if it doesn't come back, it's okay, but sometimes they come back. So if it comes back, then there may be additional work required. You may have to call a specialist, because really what's happening is moisture is in the material and it's pushing the salt out. So you have to stop that moisture from either reaching the material and penetrating through. It's just a cosmetic nuisance, but it can break, over time it can break down especially concrete, it can break down the concrete and become soft and flaky, and it'll break out.
All right. How about insulating your foundation walls? Is it a must for all foundation walls to be insulated?
According to the building code, foundation wall has to be insulated at least 3 feet below grade. And it is important. 35% of all your heat loss from your house occurs within your foundation. Between the foundation walls and the header space, which is where the top of the concrete and the wood is, first piece of wood's put there for your floor. That header space, because the concrete or the wood, or if you use block or use concrete, that surface is irregular. The wood sits on top of it, and there can be gaps. So there's a lot of heat can be lost. And there's varying degrees or wisdoms on how far down the insulation should go. Does it go to the floor, 6 inches from the floor, or what? Because the whole issue dealing with new houses is they become so airtight and you got moisture problems. So you got to get rid of the moisture in a new house. So insulating the basement walls will make the whole house feel warmer.
Warmer, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so how high does a foundation wall need to be above grade?
It should be a minimum of 6 inches above grade. And if it's too low, then, especially if they're using bricking type material, then your snow, or worse, what people do is they take flower beds, they build them up, and now you have dirt above the foundation, the height of the foundation. And you water it. Again, bricks and concrete are porous. Water will permeate through, and you have a wood structure which is going to get wet. So you're actually going to raise your water table up. And I see this a lot, that people build up their flower beds, they put another 6 or 7 inches onto it, and now the water is up over top of the brick structure. And the bottom of the brick, the bottom row of bricks today, there would be a small hole every so many bricks, and it's a weep hole. Allow moisture to come out of behind the brick. When it rains, it goes through the bricks, and then that'll rain out. And also that allows fresh air to go up in behind the bricks, and that's to keep your wooden structure dry and clean, stop it from rotting. So sometimes builders build the foundation too low, and you'll see sometimes
It can cause problems.
it can cause problems. Sometimes, especially in property that has a grade to it. So you see one part is too low. I've seen houses where the electricity going in is right at the grade. So you have a hole that they drill for 4 inches, and you now got your power coming into it, and it's right at the dirt level. Right. And so you're just kind of asking for tricks. Right. And then,
okay, so for today's final question, let's say there's a portion of my foundation wall on the exterior flaking. Should I be concerned?
This depends on what the flaking is. Most of the time, on the exterior wall of the foundation, they put parging on, whether it's a concrete poured foundation or whether it's a block wall foundation. They'll put parging. Parging is a mixture of cement with water, and think of it like a milkshake, and they put a brush in it and just brush it on today. And that flakes off. It's just done for a cosmetic reason because of the marks that be left on there.
Right.
Older, there is another type of parging where they put it on with a trowel, and it's usually about a 1/4 inch thick. Again, it's done from a point of view of cosmetic, but when that starts flaking off, it becomes much more noticeable than the other type. So sometimes it can also mean that the concrete is deteriorating and needs to be looked at, but most of the time it's just a parging.
Just a parging.
Yeah, so you can just reparge it. It's easy to do, and it will help. It does cover up some small cracks, so it is helping that part of it.
All right, Greg, thanks for coming on today's show.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
If you're buying a home and you need a home inspector, call Greg McHale at CSS Inspections. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Joe Terceira, and we'll see you next time.